actually, because they talked a little bit today. We won't have to get into it too much, but they talked a little bit today about how the dollar has been the strongest it's ever been in the last 10 years. And the European euro has a direct influence on that. It's going down, and the other markets are also going down in response to the strong dollar. I'm not sure how long it'll last, especially if Mr. Trump decides to do any tariffs, but it's interesting. And 10 years the dollar is that strong, and there's so much chaos in the world. Go figure. I have no solution for that whatsoever.
Right.
Um, let's
But can I
start
tell
off.
you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, because when euro is weak, generally the dollar gets stronger. So I think the chaotic mess in France, in Germany, in even though obviously United Kingdom is not part of the European Union, nonetheless, there's tremendous amount of chaos in European Union and Europe as a whole. So they see dollar as the stronger form of currency. You also have crisis in the Middle East. You also have parts of crisis in West, Central Asia. So all of these play a factor. How
Yeah,
long
I
will it
agree.
last? Let's see.
I
It's up and
agree.
down.
And
It's
I
up and down.
No, I agree. And I
It's
think
up
it's
and down.
interesting because somewhere some currency has to have some stability, or else the whole world will go poof. Okay, let's talk a little bit, five
Yeah.
minutes about
Something
Jimmy
somewhere.
Carter.
Right.
I mean, Jimmy Carter just passed, and I mean, what
Oh,
a humble soul he was. I
yeah.
mean, I think we can both agree his presidency wasn't the
Yes.
greatest, the
Yes.
Iran-Contra affair, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But honestly, after he left the presidency, he became, in my opinion, a real mensch. And he and Rosalind were really the epitome of a
Absolutely.
good working class couple who were there to help the needy. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Honestly, you're absolutely correct. I think Jimmy Carter's legacy would always, part of it would always be known with the with the Iran hostage crisis, the fall of the Shah. He helped to overthrow the Shah, all of the coups in Latin America, in Ethiopia. But I think once you left the White House, you truly saw what the man was about. A great humanitarian. He did a lot for the Palestinians. He spoke up for American values. I think he is one of those rare men in American political leadership who will be fondly remembered by everyone,
Yeah,
right? Once he left for the lack of a better term, the White House, when you feed the poor, when you build houses, when you do your best, he was a peacemaker, right? I always
right.
wondered, I think he should have been more of a diplomat than a president. I've
Yeah,
always felt
yeah. I
he
would,
would make
yeah,
a brilliant diplomat, I think. And of course, his legacy with between the peace deal between Egypt and Israel. But I think it's going to be about 70% positive because he was such a decent soul,
right.
and
And he was,
30%,
yeah,
negative. And I think anyone who lives with the same woman or married to the same lady for 77 years, that's old school.
yeah.
Decency, human respect. You're not going to find that today.
No,
You're not
you
going to
won't.
find it.
You won't. And
You won't
that's
find
what's so
that. So
nice
he's going to
about
be
him.
missed.
Yeah, he will be missed. And
Yeah.
I wonder now who will go to his,
Funeral.
ceremony. Yeah, his funeral. Will
Well,
all
I
the
think they
presidents
all
go?
have to go by law. They all
Yeah,
have to go,
I don't
right?
know if they
So,
have to go, but I mean, I
no, no,
think,
no, no. He was just, I believe, so you have obviously President Carter. I don't know if President Biden will go. We could deal with that later. I don't think he's physically up to it because if you notice, you barely see him now. Certainly George Bush will go. Certainly Bill Clinton will go. Certainly President Obama will go. So you have three right there. You have, again,
Trump
five
will go.
presidents. Trump will go. That's four. And the fifth one would be either President Biden or Mrs. Biden. So I think depends when they would bury,
Yeah,
or they could say it's impersonal. But I think everybody will go. I think
yeah, I
pretty much
think so
everybody
too.
has to go. You
I
have to go.
agree.
There's no way you're not
Yeah,
going to go.
right.
Everybody has to go.
It's interesting. We're talking about the decency of a presidency
Yeah.
and the decency of Jimmy Carter. You know, when's the last time really we had a decent president? When's the last time we could look
Yeah.
up to our president? Was it Ronald Reagan? Jimmy Carter, perhaps.
Yeah.
Certainly Billy Clinton, no. George Bush, no. Obama, eh. I mean,
Uh,
I think Obama
has
is
its
a
moments.
decent man. I think he's a decent man. Biden, I don't know, and certainly Trump, we don't think so. But
So,
now we're in a situation where all this stuff is coming out about Joe Biden, his
right.
what do you want to call it, dementia, who knew, who didn't know,
Yeah,
why was it kept
exactly.
quiet? What do you think is happening there?
I have to tell you, it's interesting because we've been saying for some time that this is not something normal. We knew something was going on because when President Biden showed up in the infamous, debate, it would be absurd to ask the American people to believe that no one knew he was that sick. I think people knew around him. There's no way you didn't know. So they hidden it. The problem with that is that not only you're lying to the American people, but for me, the question becomes who's running the country? If you have someone whose foreign policy or domestic policy is based on what he or she thinks it's best for the country, not what really is, you have a problem. I think for that, particularly in Middle East for me and the MENA region, you have Mr. Blinken, right? I don't think you could debate. He's one of the most, anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, even anti-Arab Christian. It doesn't have to be that individual. Since for the past 25 years, he advocated every attack, every coup on the Islamic world, be in the
Yeah.
Middle East, be in Africa. So, but beyond that, you have to let the American people know, right? And it's interesting because you're beginning to see an article on Newsweek, but today they had it on CNN, and they were trying to make an excuse. Yet, well, he was sick, and it wasn't that bad, but they knew. And for me, the question becomes not only is it against the law, but I'm not a lawyer, but can you say in some ways it could be treasonous? In other words, if you are doing something that's not what the president would have wanted, or it's what you think it's best, but it's not best for the country, is that a treasonous act? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I do believe an investigation is in order. I do not like investigations. I think it's a waste of time, waste of money. But we're in this age in which people will find out so quickly that you better just come up and deal with it right away.
I find it interesting that if you look at the timeline,
Yeah,
we all go back to the debate as being the final point per se where
right,
the American public was made aware. But
right.
I remember having discussions with you when
Yes,
we were watching the slow demise of Joe Biden, and we were
right.
saying almost a year to the before the debate,
Debate.
at least 8 months before the debate, that this guy is not going to make it to the next presidency.
Right.
And I think that too many people in the inner circle knew. They
Yes.
kept it quiet because I think they did not have a plan B. I don't think that Kamala was their plan B. And I wonder, and we've discussed this before,
Yeah.
if he had gotten out earlier and we would
That's
have
right.
had a quote unquote proper primary where people
Yeah.
could have
Yes.
run for president, would we still have Trump today? That's a question
It,
I guess every scholar will be asking. Nobody
right.
has the answer for this, but I do believe that
Yeah.
people knew, and I do
Absolutely.
believe, and I'm sure Nancy Pelosi knew, and I
Oh,
think,
absolutely. So did Biden, so did Obama. There's
yeah,
no way he
they
didn't know.
all knew, and I
They all
think
knew.
they did not. Honestly, I don't think they had a plan to what to do, but
Well,
that
I
shows
disagree with
me in a
that
way
because
they no, I think they didn't have enough confidence in the American
right.
people to get
Could be,
Biden
yes.
out.
Or they were just power greedy, right?
Yeah,
Because let me put it this way. The President Biden came up and said, I'm a transitory. So 2 years into it, they knew the signs were already there. You and I
yeah,
discussed the way he would walk, the way he would talk. It was
yeah.
then that they should have said, okay, we're going to have a primary. You're going to step aside 2 years in advance. Because imagine if in 2022, even half of 2022, if she would have stepped in, who knows where Middle East would be? Who knows it would be in Ukraine? You have these warmongers pushing for war, these neoconservatives in full charge. Then no
Yeah.
wonder you're here. So I think they part of it is not that they didn't know, they knew, but part of it they wanted to maintain that system in power because of greed, and part of it is because they wanted to keep the system going. But I don't care the reason why. For me, it doesn't matter. The question becomes, I didn't vote for Mr. Blinken or for Mrs. Obama. I voted for Joe Biden. And I think I have to be told, okay, this is a problem. And unfortunately, now what you have created is that a moment in which people will integrate facts with conspiracy theories, saying, there you go, there is another government, there is a shadow government running everything, right? Which part of it is what Mr. Trump was saying all along. So now you have given credibility to that argument. And
Yeah,
that's
but
never
don't
going to go
forget,
away.
but you don't forget that this happened also under Reagan, when Reagan was also dipping and Nancy was literally running the show. I mean,
But
and
not to this
people,
extent. No,
not to
President
this extent,
Reagan,
but the point is that
no.
he was nowhere, also nowhere to be seen, and they kept it also from the American public. And but the difference is
Yeah,
he had had two terms.
that's right.
It was a different time in our lives. Um,
Different leadership. You
Different
had Vice
leadership.
President, you had George Bush.
We didn't have wars, or did
That's
we?
right.
We had the end of the Cold War. I
That's
mean, let's
right.
be honest. It was
Yeah.
a different time. So I think what's happening now is I find it really interesting that it's now coming to light. And I think Democrats really need to get their act together. It seems to me they really let things slide. And it's a
You know,
pity. What?
I wonder if it's just the Democrats. I think even some people may know it's because when you're in the intelligence community or when you're in the intelligentsia or when you're in the media, it's not Republican, Democrat. It's not that. It's what they want. If you have individuals who are pushing your values, you're going to keep your mouth shut. So it's not just the Democrats. I'm sure many Democrats did not know, but the inner circle knew, the intelligence community knew, the military knew. So if you have a president that's ill, there's no way your Secretary of Defense doesn't know. And
No, that's
so who,
true. Yeah, but don't forget,
right?
remember
And so
when
who, for example, everybody would tell you, I think there's a general belief that the reason, you have a problem between obviously Russia and the United States is personal belief system towards Russia. So who gave the order to Ukraine or gave permission to give Ukraine to shut into Russia? Was it Joe Biden or was it Mr. Blinken? Was it Joe Biden? Was it Secretary of Defense? Who gave the order? Because if he
but
doesn't
that's
know what's going on,
yeah,
you
but
could
but
be
I
at
think
war.
yeah, but I think let's be honest, Mitra. I think if you go in the past, there have been decisions made by many generals of this, that, and the other, where the president perhaps was not totally aware of what was going on. That's not the point. The point I think is this, and but I'm talking about the Democrats is this, is that under their leadership,
Right.
this happened. And they were the
True.
ones that were, you know, blasting the others for being, on the wrong side of the law,
Right.
let's say. So this is going to come back to haunt them, I think. And I really think, regardless of what everybody thinks of Kamala Harris or whatever, she had 3 months. I mean, that's a lot of work for 3 months. If
But
Biden really wanted Kamala Harris to be the new representative,
right.
why didn't he
And
go out a little
honestly,
earlier?
there's
Yeah.
something odd. So you said Kamala Harris had 3 months. I don't think so. If they knew he was this sick, which they did, they should have prepared her a year before. You barely saw her anywhere. So what you have now is you had a system in which this is Kamala Harris. She's going to be the nominee. We're going to have her all the money poured in. Well, that doesn't make sense. People were saying this is not a monarchy. So I think they had plenty of time. If you knew this gentleman was sick, and you do know, you should have stepped up more than a year ago and told the president of the
Yeah.
United States,
Yeah. Yeah.
you need to step aside.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you don't, we'll remove you because all of these
But
people
Mitra,
who
you're
are
forgetting one
telling
thing.
you,
Mitra,
yeah,
you're forgetting one thing.
mm,
Remember they did talk to him. Remember, there were some instances where they were talking to him about stepping down, and he said, no, 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 I'm not doing it yet. I'm not doing it yet. I wonder,
According to whom? According to these people who lied? They
well,
could
I
have
don't know.
gone in.
Well, I
Well,
don't know
that's
that.
the point.
I
For me,
don't know
it is
that, but I think that
right.
people did try to say step aside. And this is the point I'm trying to make, and that is
Yeah.
what role did his wife, Jill Biden, have to tell
Oh,
him,
I'm sure.
keep pushing,
There's no
keep
way she
pushing?
didn't know. I
Yeah.
think, of course, I think for me, that will come in.
Yeah.
The wife's job is to protect her husband, but he's the president of the United States first.
Yeah.
Is your husband second?
Yeah.
So the problem becomes, I think, for me, is that if they would have gone to Mr. Biden and said a year ago, you're leaving now or we'll remove you, and you would have that. So put her in, he would have been done that. He would have been done. But they didn't. They said, well, the election comes first. So their loyalty was first to the election. Rather, it was best for the country. We would not perhaps be here had we had a different leadership or we had someone else. We would not have perhaps even Trump. But if you're like, no, we could have a different candidate running.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah. I
didn't do
agree.
it. And so what you have a scenario in which the same people who were telling, the people who worked for Trump, you're cowards, you're traitors, why don't you stand up and tell them they're worse? At least the man had his mind. So the question now becomes where? Because once it becomes slowly on the traditional press, remember, go outside a traditional, New York Times, Washington Post, whatever press, the issue of his health has been on social media, has been
Yeah.
on non-traditional
Yeah. Yeah.
for more
Sure.
than a year and a half. They're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the guy can't
Exactly.
hold it straight.
No, no, I know.
So,
I know. All right.
now you're here.
Yeah,
Now you're here.
I think
And
we
it's
have
worse
to,
now.
no, no, I agree. And I think we have to watch this space and see what really comes out. But I agree. This was, uh, I don't know. I don't think it's treason per se, but I definitely think this was a definite cover up, and I
Right.
don't like it at all.
Absolutely.
Not at
I don't
all.
care for it. So what's the difference between this and what Richard Nixon did? You
Yeah.
stole stuff,
Well,
son. Well, you lied to the people. So
yeah,
it's okay
yeah,
for you to lie.
yeah, yeah,
People, I think if the Democrats had come in and had the courage to say, look, people, the old man's got to go,
yeah.
right? The old man's got to go. And so the old man's going to go, even if she was not be the candidate, you would have other candidates running against her
Absolutely.
or a
Absolutely.
different VP, right?
Absolutely.
That being said, you can argue Donald Trump would win no matter what because of the economy, because of the war. But honestly, I don't think so. I think the American people were not going to have her as the VP. So I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, let's see what happens on that one next week and the weeks to come.
Right. Let's see. Let's see.
Um, let's move on to um the the planes. What's happening with the
Oh my
planes?
God.
I mean,
I don't,
first of
three in a
all,
row.
well, okay. I'm sure there's
Well, I
also
understand.
little
Right.
planes that are going up and down, whatever. But I think the major one, first of all, let's talk about Azerbaijan.
Right.
Azerbaijan is a friend, an ally, a business partner of Russia. There's a mistake made. This is the second mistake that Russia has made and shot down the second passenger plane. This is insane.
Mm. Well,
Um,
it's war. It's war. It's what
yeah,
surprised me, and I think what was fascinating, and that tells you something about him. He what is considered an apology from a Russian perspective, like less a day later. And I think that's important because you know why? When I like to compare it to, we're still waiting for Boeing to admit they committed a crime, when they said their planes were crashing. So the fact that he admitted sends a message, I think, but it was an interesting apology, right? It says it's war, it's on my territory. But what I also thought was fascinating was when Kazakhstan said today, it was in Kazakh territory, I'm going to send the black boxes to Brazil for investigation. I thought that was interesting. So, okay, I don't think Mr. Aliyev, he's, can really go against Mr. Putin. So Mr. Aliyev said it was shut down. And so, but unfortunately, what I found fascinating, it's the response. I know you don't care for social media, but I went on Twitter and I went on um, uh, Instagram and Facebook, and I read different views, not just bots. I know you're worried about that, but nonetheless, you have to read. And what I found fascinating was the people's response was, we're terribly sorry for this tragedy, but so what? You have 50,000 dead in Gaza. And it was fascinating to me because now, no matter what we say, the world's going to say, you have no right to judge. You're murdering people in Gaza. That's what I found was fascinating. I don't mean it just in English. I read it in different languages, people's response. They're terribly, they're sending their condolences to the people of Azerbaijan. It's terrible. But you have a whole world here. So
Mitra,
I
have to stop you there.
No, I understand you disagree.
No, I
I'm just saying
it's okay that we can disagree.
That I'm not saying it's right.
Well, first of all, you can read
an interesting thing I'm observing.
Yeah, I understand, but you can read all sorts of different languages and all sorts of things, and the majority of things that are happening. I have to edit that. The majority of things that are happening are being written by people who want you to keep that mindset about the poor Palestinians in Gaza, and that's everywhere. I don't think you can compare a Russian
there's no comparison.
A Russian mistake of another passenger plane. But that's not the point. I think the point really is my point is, regardless of what happened, is that I wonder, what did Putin tell the Azerbaijani president?
You mean Aliyev?
Between the two men.
You have to understand what's going on. So remember, you have Turkey, Iran, Azerbaijan, China, and Iran. Central Asia, in this case, the Caucasus, are the territories of Russia, China, and Iran, right? And so the Turks tried to go in. And so what you had in a moment in the past year, in which you had Aliyev working with Netanyahu and Turkey in many ways to counterbalance Iran. And the Iranians have warned Aliyev in a long time, bro, you're an independent country from us not that long ago. And so you can't keep betraying us for the sake of Netanyahu. And then Mr. Putin also gave a little of a light warning to Azerbaijan and Mr. Netanyahu. But it's interesting because midst of all of this is the relationship with Armenia. And the only country that's ever defending Armenia is Iran. Right? And so there is obviously something going on. But listen, what is Aliyev going to say to Russia? Right? Russia put his papa in. Russia made sure he's in.
No, right? I agree. But that's what I'm saying. What did he promise him to say?
Well, he already has it in power. So he could say, listen, Mr. Putin has been supporting Azerbaijan really in many ways against the wishes of Armenians. It's too much, and supporting that. And, that wasn't lost on anyone. I don't understand when they had the
Mitra, what is the connection between the Azerbaijani plane going down in Kazakhstan and Armenia?
No, I'm trying to tell you.
But don't bring in Armenia here.
What I'm trying to tell you is that there is something. Maybe he's going to say, I'm going to back off, criticizing you on Armenia. You understand what I'm saying? So Azerbaijan-Armenian conflict. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Maybe he's going to say, okay, that's it. What do you want me to do? I'm freaking Putin. It's war. Get over it. So I don't think the exact thing.
Of course not.
That's what I was trying to tell you with Armenia. Maybe he's going to say, I'm going to back off because there was pressure from Armenia and from Iran. Hey, do something about Azerbaijan. That's what I was trying to tell you.
I get it.
Do something. You're a Christian country.
I get it. I think though, I think it's interesting that it's the second passenger plane shot down and there have never been any ramifications whatsoever. Not repercussions whatsoever. But anyway, I guess it's Putin, it's Soviet Union, it's Russia, it's whatever. It's not going to happen.
I don't know about that. If
it was the US or the UK, or even Ukraine that shot down a passenger plane. Come on, I think.
I'm sorry. We didn't shoot down Boeing, but Boeing plane crashed and he knew it was faulty. 350 people died. It lied to the American government and the American government didn't go after it. Then another one was killed And it covered that up until there was a whistleblower. So I don't think you can compare because Boeing got away with it because it had support in the US government as well. So don't go there.
Okay.
You don't want to
Okay.
really do that because you can't
Okay,
say
I
if
can
it
agree
was
with that.
US, we would have gone after it. Don't
I
go
can
there.
agree
But
with
this is
that, but I
war,
think there's a difference.
you
There's
know.
a difference in malfeasance and actually shooting down a plane. But okay,
But
the end of the
you're
story,
right.
the end
But
of the
wait a
story
minute. You're
is
right.
passenger planes, passengers died, and
Yeah.
the faulty people were never ever held responsible for it. It's interesting because Boeing, I know that they had to pay a lot of money, but still, even today,
Right.
Boeing is still manufacturing planes and not having, I don't know, I just don't understand it. Is it because if you look at the world, what planes
Yeah.
are there out there? It's Boeing, Airbus,
Yeah.
Boeing, Airbus,
I
Boeing,
think that's it,
Airbus.
right?
I mean,
But I mean,
yeah,
you
you
have the
have,
Chinese, but no, I
but
understand.
yeah, but
But
you know what I
Boeing
mean. The
hasn't paid for it.
majority,
Boeing hasn't
it's
paid for it. I think Boeing hasn't paid for it yet. Remember,
okay.
the leaks just came out last year, and they didn't even want to admit it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
that
killed
kills me.
350
Yeah,
people.
no, that
Then
kills me.
they
Yeah,
hid
yeah.
it. So the problem becomes, I think it's a little bit different, but three planes, you have, and then after that, you have the Boeing, the one that Korea hit. That's a Boeing.
South Korea, South Korea.
South Korea is a Boeing plane. I think that
It was a Boeing 737, and
yeah, again
it
737.
was the landing gear didn't work. But
Right. So
unbelievable, unbelievable.
I mean, at this stage, I'm going on a mule. I'm going to go on a
It's
mule
scary.
traveling
Yeah,
or
it's
plane.
scary. It's
I mean, I
scary.
don't know. I
It
think
is
you're to
scary.
the point that you have to ask. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it is scary. So
Well, let's
yeah,
watch
yeah,
this space
relax. So I,
regarding
I
what
think
happens
it's
in
that.
South
But
Korea,
nonetheless, I think
because South Korea is impeaching their
well,
president. They're having this
right. He's
horrible
impeaching the
problem.
president. The impeaching, yeah. It's the
Terrible.
economy is, topsy-turvy, a little bit. You have impeaching the president. It would, and you
And
have this
the
now.
lowest birth rate in the entire world.
I think that yes, you're right. But it's interesting. I wonder if they're going to do it now. Look, China, Russia, and excuse me, China and Korea have much deeper relationship than China and Japan. Historically, about a couple of thousand years ago, when they were short of people, when they were dying, that's what they did. They married into
Yeah,
China,
sure.
what is China today, or they married into what is Japan today. They may have to do that. They
Yeah.
may have to do that because it's they were telling people the ladies go back to work, have one kid. Now, who's going to take care of the elderly? You can have robots doing the work, but that's not going to change your population disappearing.
No, no, no. Let's see what
So
happens.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Let's end this one. We've talked about Jimmy Carter. We've talked about the cover up
Yeah.
of the president, and we talked about the Boeing and the Azerbaijani plane and the South Korean plane. It's like crazy. Let's see what next week brings. I'm sure new chapters will be written next week, and we'll
Europe,
follow them. I'd like next week actually to do a little talking with you a little bit about Europe and what's happening in Europe. Elections are coming up in
absolutely.
France. Elections are coming up in Germany. Let's talk a little bit about Europe next week. All right?
And Georgia, you have the protests in Georgia. You have obviously the other parts of Eastern Europe having protests, right? Look what
Yeah, but
happened in
Georgia
Georgia. The
just
gentleman came and says, poof,
he
not,
just got
I'm in.
elected. Now they elected a
Right. And he
soccer
got more
player. He's
votes.
never going anywhere. He's a hero. They're not going to get rid of
Listen,
him.
they're not gonna, yeah. This is, people tend to, if you look at Europe, it's interesting because they are facing similar problems all over the Western world in many ways. You have the ultra left and the ultra right combined. They're both against globalization. They're both against foreign intervention. They both want to concentrate domestically. And then you have the center and the center right. And so that's in whether it's in France, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in Georgia, whether it's in, Moldova, it's the same thing. And in Europe, it's really between choosing European Union or choosing Russia and the East. What are you going to choose? That's what it is, right? That's what it is. And so I think there is that fear. And look what's happening to Ukraine, which we could pick it up, right? They're just being killed, boom, 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 boom. Which brings the question, how long before the Ukrainians say, okay, enough is enough? I don't know.
Well, it's been 2 years and they haven't cried wolf yet. So let's see.
Yeah. So,
All
well,
right.
let's see.
Let's do
But the
Europe
checks
next
stop
week.
coming in. The
Let's
checks are
do
not coming in anymore.
let's do Europe next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.